Hello, everyone. Welcome in for this wonderful interview with our Dean of Education, Dr. Audra Watson. My name is Sarah O. I am the digital content producer here at University of the People, and I'm super excited to have our Dean here with us. I'm going to let her introduce herself to you all today.
Good morning, everyone, and I'm really excited to be here as well. My name is Audra Watson, and I am the Dean of Education at University of the People, and just really excited about this conversation.
Yes, thank you again so much for being here with us today. We do want to talk about education, of course, as an online university. That is always our main theme. But we also want to discuss women in education and the importance of having accessible education for women across the globe. I'm just going to be asking a few questions and letting Dr. Watson talk a little bit about her experiences as a woman in education as well as in higher education. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. So question number one, what are the benefits to having women in leadership?
So I think the most important benefit is they serve as role models, right? More than half of the population are women, and so the fact that I think that having women in leadership positions gives younger women, gives other women, even older women, a good view of what they are able to do in their own lives. I
Right.
think women also think differently in leadership positions. It bodes well in terms of things like pay equity and other challenges that are currently out there. And I think just women have a different way of looking at the world. I know I'm painting with a broad brush, but we have a way of trying to figure out how the pieces come together more seamlessly. And I think that's what we bring to leadership positions.
I agree. I do think that, especially for me growing up, being able to look around me and see other women who were leading change and, positively impacting my community also definitely helped me see that, I can do that as well. A lot of people don't have those role models in their personal lives. So even being able to work in a space like University of the People, where we do have women in leadership, our Dean of Education is a woman, our Provost is a woman, I do think it really impacts our students who may not have that in their everyday life.
Right. I
Yeah,
was going to
and
add one
mhm,
thing,
of course.
and we tend to do a lot of things in the background and are
Yeah,
often holding up the work of other people that take what's the word?
credit
Credit.
potentially, or
Right.
yes.
Right. I'm trying to find a different word than credit, but take credit for the work. So if you think about lots of movements and things like that, it's
Yes,
women that led the way in those movements. I think about churches, the women in the background doing lots of hard work.
yeah,
It's leadership work, but they're not necessarily getting the credit for all that work
agreed.
they're doing.
Agreed. And having that, even talking about that, with all of us, at least the two of us growing up, and potentially having women in our lives who we
Mhm,
saw as leaders, whether that's behind the scenes or at the forefront,
mhm.
who are some women that have inspired you in your life?
So I think about two women. One is my mother. My father died unexpectedly some years ago. It's probably been
So
about
sorry to hear
30
that.
years now. Like I have been inspired. My dad was definitely the head of household, and my mother often deferred to him. And it's been very interesting to see how she's in some ways blossomed and grown and found her voice. And so that is inspiring to me.
Yeah.
And then the other is a woman named Lucille Sworns. When I worked for the New York City Department of Education, I had multiple roles there, but she was the superintendent of one of the school districts in the regions, and just was sort of the embodiment of grace, but also was able to get things done, right?
Right.
And that people knew that she was not, like she felt strongly about the education of young people
Right.
and it being our sacred duty to ensure that the work that we did was in honor of those young people. And so those are the two women that I think of most in terms of who inspire me
That's
about what
amazing.
leadership can look like.
That's amazing. I know that a lot of people love their moms. I'm sure a lot of people who are watching right now can agree that their
Yeah.
moms are huge inspirations. And I think education, even me growing up, a lot of my teachers that were women, they always kind of, held a special place in my heart or
Hmm.
inspired me to continue my education, especially, when things get tough or you get discouraged. So I'm glad that you were able to have the both of them kind of
Yeah.
inspire you throughout your life. And, speaking of potentially getting discouraged, what ways have you been able to stay motivated when you might have felt like giving up throughout your life or just throughout your educational journey?
So I think oftentimes I think about, like, definitely have my moments where like there is discouragement, but you can't stay there. And I think about the people that I might be a role model to. So you
Right.
need to be able to share with them that things are going to, there will be times, not everything is always going to be positive. There may be, places where you may have failed, you may have, not done or not gotten what you aspired to get, but knowing that it's a moment and a blip, I think is a good way of showing people that life is, hills and valleys,
Mhm.
and you've got to be able to weather both. I think the other thing is that I am religious as well, and so I think I I turn to that as well. Try to
Yeah.
remember that it's not just about me, that there's a larger purpose.
Right. And I think a lot of our students can relate to that with using religion as a way to stay strong and keep moving forward. And for anyone who might not have that, just
Religious,
having
exactly.
a right, having a support system and, thinking about the lives that you could be impacting positively when you might be feeling down is super important as well.
Yeah,
Um,
and I'm really glad that you said that because I
yeah,
didn't wanna alienate anybody who is not.
right.
My closest friend is not, and
Yeah,
she finds ways as well to,
exactly.
inspire herself.
Exactly. And that's always important.
Yeah,
And, especially for women, a lot of women balance work, they balance their life and family. Family is super important, regardless of what you might have going on. Even if you don't have family per se, having a form of family or a support system that you feel like is family is important. What advice can you give for women who have to juggle all three? And is there such a thing as balance when you're juggling work, life, and family?
so one, I'm gonna say, and I often say this, is that I do not have kids.
Yeah.
I do now. I have inherited my 17, well, he's now 18-year-old nephew who came to
Wow.
live with us. But even before that, I have always been inspired by and in awe of women who have kids
Yeah.
because I don't know like how they do it all.
Yeah.
I would say I think there's nothing called perfect, right?
Right.
And I think that at times one thing is going to take priority over others. I think that the best you can do is sort of listen to yourself, right? And know um, when, like, if the people in your lives are saying you need to slow down, then you
Yeah,
need to slow down. If your
definitely.
kids are feeling as though they are not getting what they need, you need to listen to those things. And you shouldn't feel bad about it, right? Because there
Yeah,
are multiple things. We're all juggling multiple things. And sometimes some things take a priority.
right.
And all we can do is the best we can do.
Exactly. And like you said, there's no such thing as perfect. I think a lot of times, women in particular, we can be harder on ourselves, especially if you have family. Okay, work seems to be taking priority this week. Okay, the kids seems to be
Yeah,
taking a priority this week. Just not being as hard on ourselves if maybe we fall short on a day or short on a week and we can't juggle all three.
absolutely.
It's super easy to be hard on yourself, and
Mhm.
it's a lot harder to be nice to yourself. So, treat yourself with kindness the same way you would treat your family or your coworkers or
Yeah.
just people in your life, which is super important.
And I would add, right, we have support systems, right? So
Right.
family is what you make family,
Yeah,
right? And so there are other people that you can potentially lean on, ask for support, or just sometimes you need to vent. Reach out to those people, but also remember that those people will need you at some point, and you need to be
exactly.
willing to support them as they need
Exactly.
support.
That's super important. And speaking of like supporting and trying to be kind to yourself, what are some ways that you stay grounded and take care of yourself on a day to day, on a monthly basis?
So I think so on the weekends, if like I try to find time to just relax and so just have time for myself. I also, as I said, am religious, and so
Yeah.
I spend time in church. I spend a lot of time in church because I'm also a trustee
Yeah.
at my church. But those are some of the ways, and then making sure during, and sometimes my friends need to remind me of this, uninterrupted work time. I used to be the type of person who would often, do work when I was on vacation. And
Yeah.
now, and I say this there are a lot of young women that work with me. I say to them, like, this is uninterrupted time. I have them put it in my calendar so I know that I'm not supposed to reach out to them, so that it is their time to be with their families, to be with their friends, and to completely disconnect. And I find that when you do those things, that you come back feeling refreshed, right? You
Yeah.
have an opportunity to sort of, you know read a book, do things
Right.
that you normally get a chance to do. And when you have those opportunities, you're able to get back to the work and go full throttle. So
Yeah.
work hard, play hard.
I think that's a great way to put it. A lot of people don't, even vacation times, they might still be doing work, or they might not actually take time to take care of themselves. And it's really important to do that, even if you might think that, oh, I have to get this done. You can't help other people if you don't help yourself first. Even on
Exactly.
an airplane, they tell you put your vest on first before you help the person next
That's
to
right.
you.
That's right.
So, make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because if you don't, you might not be able to take care of the people that you care about as well.
And most things are not life or death, right?
Right.
We treat things as though they're life or death. Guess
Yeah.
what? Things will continue
Exactly.
despite your absence.
Exactly. They will.
Yeah,
So, never feel bad if you do just have to say, hey, I can't get this done today, or hey, I need to reschedule, because,
yeah,
life is what you make it,
yeah.
honestly.
That's right.
And, speaking of just like things that you can do to help yourself, once you help yourself, there are other ways for you to support people in your life and in the places that you work. How can women support other women in their organizations, or just, in their day to day?
So I think both formal and informal mentoring is critical.
Yeah.
So as I said, like there are a lot of young women that I work with in the organization that I work for, and I make sure that like I spend time talking with them. If they need an ear, I want to be a sounding board for them in confidence. I also sometimes I try not to. You never want to overstep, but
Right.
if you see them sort of making, so I've seen young women who, like they're going full throttle, they don't know how to set barriers,
Yeah.
right? At the end of the day, it's one thing if there's a major project and you have to like do later hours, etc., for a short period of time, but if you consistently do that, that is what people will come to expect
Yep.
from you. And
Yeah.
so I will say to them, and I know it's hard to hear when you're young and you're trying to like, you want to move up
Right.
in an organization, et cetera. But I try to, share lessons like that with them, that, like you basically need to set boundaries. And
Yeah.
there are ways to do that without being rude, without being aggressive.
Right.
But you need to assert yourself. So I think I really, try to help young people sort of navigate things that I wish somebody had helped me navigate,
Yeah.
and just to think about the long haul, because when you're younger you think it's all about certain things, right? And
Yeah.
as you get older, you sort of get more perspective on what's most important and
Yeah.
what's less important.
I agree. Especially, yeah,
Mental,
formal
sorry.
and informal. No, no, no. But I was just saying, setting boundaries, especially like me being younger in my career, just speaking from personal experience, I had to have a kind of formal and informal mentor teach me, use your voice, speak up, say when, you can't do something. It doesn't mean that you're lazy. It doesn't mean that you don't want to do it. You just have to make sure that you are, like you said, asserting yourself, don't have to do aggressively, don't have to do it in a rude way, but just being honest, because a lot of women tend to feel like they can't speak up or they're not allowed to speak up. But the
Mhm.
more you practice it, the more you speak up for yourself, the more you set those boundaries, the easier it becomes. And
Right.
you want to start that now because you form a habit of it. Breaking habits is just as hard as forming them.
Harder.
Exactly, exactly. So don't get in the habit of just like, laying down and just not saying anything and just staying stressed because, it feels a lot better when you say, okay, hey, I can't do this, or you're telling other women, hey, here are some ways that you could set your own boundaries, or these are things that I've done. I think that's a really good piece of advice for any woman, either in a formal, organization at work or just, in your personal life and you're hanging with your friends and families. Boundaries are super important in life.
Can I add something?
Yeah, of
So,
course.
I think about when I was younger and I would say yes, yes, yes. And then I would be angry and say, like, people are taking advantage of me when in
Right.
fact they weren't taking advantage. They were abiding by my boundaries, right? Which
Exactly.
were not. So I think that's the other thing is that it can make you angry and
Yeah,
upset when in fact you haven't set the parameters for people.
exactly.
And then they don't understand, like, what's the problem?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Set boundaries not only for other people, but for yourself. Know
So
what you want, know what makes you upset, learn your emotional state because, you don't want to hold everything in. And then it gets to the point where, like, you've been pushing my boundaries, but you never actually set them with anyone but yourself. It's super important to communicate, regardless of whether or not it's uncomfortable to communicate for sure.
yeah,
But it's important to do so that you can move throughout life and move throughout your workplace in a comfortable space for yourself as well as for your coworkers.
agreed.
And a lot of women, they're kind of on the fence with higher education. They might have a large family to take care of. They might be busy with work. At University People, as some of you know, some of you may not know, we do offer online American-accredited tuition-free degrees and certificates. So what advice would you give to a woman who's on the fence about pursuing a higher education?
So I would say if you are on the fence, try it and then make a decision that
Yeah,
this isn't for you. I think, for me, as I was pursuing higher education, it wasn't something that I felt that I was going to use immediately,
right.
but I wanted to have tools in my toolkit that when I decided it was time, or if a perfect opportunity came up, I would have the tools to do it.
Yeah,
I think what I love about University of the People is that it's so affordable, and so
yeah,
it provides access for people who never saw themselves in higher education. And there's so many people who have the talent, the potential, and they are unaware of
yeah,
an opportunity like this that could really open up their lives, to the possibilities out there. So
exactly.
I would say, and this is actually how I ended up in education as a young person, like young. I did the things with my dolls and teaching people and things like that. But I always knew that educators didn't get a lot of respect. And my
Yeah,
parents have always talked to me about being a doctor or being, something like that. And when I was in college, I happened to meet a woman so it was always in the back of my mind, but I said, I'm going to do something that's going to be more lucrative.
right.
And so I was on the path to what I really thought I wanted to do at that time was international diplomacy.
Oh,
And
wow.
I met a woman. I was the president of an on-campus group called the Coalition of Women of Color,
Mhm.
and we had women come to campus to do presentations and things like that. And I met a woman who was the first, I think, African American superintendent in Washington, D.C. public schools. And I said to
Wow.
her, I always thought about education, but then I decided, and she said, try it and then make a decision after that. And it completely changed my
Wow.
trajectory.
Wow, that's amazing. And trying things like don't knock it till you try it is definitely something that is a pretty good saying, honestly. You
Right.
might try something and dislike it, but at least you know that you tried it for sure.
That's
And like Dr. Watson was saying, it's super important to know that at UoPeople we have affordable options. going to school in person is not always as easy. Going to school online isn't easy either, but at least you know that the cost of it would be very much more affordable than if you were potentially having to pay for tuition and housing and travel and all those other things at a traditional American university. And we have students from, over 200 countries and territories who get to come here. It's very diverse and multicultural in the style of learning and how you get to learn. And you can just take one course. Like everyone starts with one course. If you're like, this isn't for me, okay. But at least you know you tried it, and it could give you the push you need to pursue your higher education and get a degree that can put you in a better place financially, or just like emotionally and mentally in your life. And speaking of advice, trying things out, what advice would you give to the next generation of female leaders across the globe?
So, what I would say is one, assert yourself because you have talent, right?
Yeah.
That can be used. The other thing that I would say is no. What I think that some leaders get wrong, and it may be even more so for women, is we don't know. Just because you're a leader doesn't mean you know everything,
Right.
right? And like, I am very clear, there are certain things that I have skill at, other things that I am not as skilled at. And so there is too much work for you to think that you're going to be able to be in charge of everything.
Right.
And not just, what you should do is sort of spread the leadership opportunities,
Yeah.
give other young people leadership opportunities, give them those opportunities to shine, to show them what skills and characteristics they have that are beneficial to the organization and to other organizations. Just make sure that you are paying it forward, right?
Right.
So that we're spreading sort of the wealth
Yeah.
around.
I
um,
agree.
I think I want women to be thoughtful mentors for others, for other young women, but also young men as well, who
Yeah.
can learn from us, men.
I agree. I think that, paying it forward is super important. A lot of people, not, I don't want to use the word gatekeep, but maybe there's like a fear of if I give too much information, my spot will be taken and like
Absolutely.
I won't be useful anymore. But, being useful as a collective is more important than being useful as an individual. You don't want all of your skills and knowledge to just die with you. Definitely make
That's
sure
right.
that you're taking the time, and it does take a little bit of energy and effort, but
Mm-hmm.
it goes a long way to making sure that the next generation that comes after us is fully prepared, fully equipped, and ready to take on any past challenges or new challenges that they may face, in education or just anywhere in life as well. And
Agree.
yes, and thank you so much for all the great advice that you have been giving so far, Dr. Watson. We have one last question.
Sure.
What are some of your personal experiences or reasons that motivated you to think or care about women's empowerment? I know you said in college you were part of the coalition of women of color, but were there any other experiences that kind of pushed you to make sure that upholding women and making sure women felt empowered was just something that was important to you?
I think, it's so funny because I had something in my head and it's gone now. It's completely gone now. Um, I think so. One is this experience with my mother.
Yeah.
And so my dad was the person who was in charge of the finances, etc. And so I think that really has helped me to think about the importance of women understanding, like, finances, being empowered within their homes and those things. But I also think that the other thing that has motivated me about this is that there is a group of, every time I go into classrooms. So I was a middle school teacher, and I think about young women who are remarkable young women but don't know it,
Right.
and wanting them to really have opportunities to be able to thrive,
Yeah.
um, and do really good things in the world. And so I think a lot back to my experiences as a middle school teacher and the young women who just were had very little self-confidence. Like many of them had very little self-confidence and wanting to help young women in particular, women who are younger than me,
Right.
feel confident and feel like they are able to um, able to achieve all their dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's super important. Especially with like younger women, just making younger women and older women. Confidence is something that a lot of women don't technically seem to have,
Yep.
just if that's personal life experiences or just, doubting themselves. And I
Hmm.
think that being able to empower women, particularly young women who are still kind of forming the idea of what it is to be a woman, is very important, especially when we think about the next generation or the next group of students who are going to, come into UoPeople or just like be our future leaders and our future mothers and our future, doctors and lawyers and engineers and anything in between. It's just really important to know that we have other women, I'm sure, just like you, that are looking out for them and making sure that they feel empowered throughout their life journey.
Yes.
Yes. And yes, but that's all we have for today. I hope that every single person who watched this video learned something, feels inspired to, pursue their higher education or just inspired to take care of themselves and care for themselves. Is there anything that you want to say, Dr. Watson, before we wrap everything up today?
No, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation. I think these conversations are important and we need to have them far more often.
Right.
And just excited to be able to talk to you and
Yeah.
hope that anyone who listens to this, that there's a kernel of something that they can take from this to apply to their own lives. And, if it's a man, I hope it's something for their daughter, their sister, their, anybody, a loved one,
Yeah.
a friend who, that they can share this with.
Yes, agree. So, like Dr. Watson said, make sure you like, follow, share, subscribe. If you've enjoyed this video, I want to say thank you for taking the time with us today, tonight, no matter what time it is for you in the world. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye. Thank you.